right. The key to exercise 11A. Let's go. All right, number one is a rectangle. The area of a rectangle is base times height. It gives us one side is 7. That doesn't matter if it's the base or the height in a rectangle because of the right angle that's built in there. So 28 equals 7 times what? That's 4. So the two sides are 7 and 4. The two lengths are 7 and 4. That means those opposite sides are 2. Add them all up, you get 22 centimeters. Okay, if the perimeter of a rectangle number 2 is 50, that means, and it gave us one side is 20, so then the opposite side of it is also 20, because it's a parallelogram. Take away 40 from 50, that leaves 10, so the other side's got to be 5. Figures not necessarily drawn to scale. So then the area is going to be 20 times 5 is 100 millimeters squared. Number 3, if the perimeter of a square is 20, then each side, divide that 20 by 4, each side must be 5. Now that we've figured out that each side is 5, 5 squared is 25 inches squared. All right, if the area of a square is 49 feet squared, 49 feet squared is the side squared. So the square root of 49 is 7. Each side is 7. There are 4 of them in a square, so the perimeter is 28 feet. All right, the formulas for the circle. The circumference is double the radius times pi. The diameter is double the radius. The radius is the radius, and the area is the radius squared times pi. So when it gives you a number 5, that 81 pi is the area, that means that's 81 is the radius squared times pi. So that 81 is the radius squared, so the radius must be 9. Now that I know what the radius is, I will double the radius. 18 times pi is the circumference, 18 pi centimeters. If it gives us the circumference is 10 pi, that means that 10 is double the radius. So 2 times the radius equals 10, so the radius is 5. The area is the radius squared times pi, so that's 25 pi millimeters squared. Okay? Number 7, I'm going to jump into the area here first. This is a parallelogram. The area is base times height. You will recognize the height because of the right angle. So the height is 8 inches. The base is the side that it's perpendicular to, which is 20. So the area here is 20 inches times 8 inches is 160 inches squared. To find the perimeter, the opposite sides of a parallelogram are congruent. So 20 plus 20 plus 10 plus 10 gets us that perimeter of 60. Number 8, I'm going to do the perimeter first this time. Opposite sides are congruent, so 12 plus 12 plus 18 plus 18 gets us 60 units for the perimeter. The area, I don't see any right angles for the height, so we better go create it, making that 30, 60, 90 triangle. When you see that 30 degrees, that's almost always what you're going to do. In this 30, 60, 90 triangle, 12 is the hypotenuse. My height is the short leg, so I'm going to go 12 divided by 2. Hypotenuse to short leg is 6. My height is 6. So now the base is 18, the height is 6, 108 units squared is the area. Number 9, a composite figure. I'm going to do this 2 ways. Way number 1, I'm going to make a rectangle on the top and the bottom. And so to figure out what my red rectangle is, I got 25 is this length. I need to figure out what this length is. This whole length here is 30. That was given us initially. This blue side of this rectangle is 20, so what must this be? It must be 10. 10 plus 20 has to equal 30. So now I can calculate the area of my red rectangle is 250. 7 times 20 is 140. Gets me a total of 390. If I split it up the other way, with a rectangle on the left and then the smaller one on the right, the green triangle is the easiest one to set up here, but I got to figure out that this side here, where's my arrow, is 10. This is still 30, this whole length here. That part's 20. 20 plus 10 equals 30. It's the same math as we had over here, of course. And then to figure out what, I've lost my arrow again, This piece is 7. 7 plus what equals 25? That's 18. So from there I can figure out that 10 times 18 is 180. 210 is my green one, and when I add them up I still get 390, so it doesn't matter which way you break it up. There was a couple other ways you could have done that as well. Number 10, what shape is this? I see the diagonals are bisecting each other. It's a parallelogram. I see a right angle there in the middle. This sucker is a rhombus. It looks like it's giving me diagonal information. So the area of this rhombus is a 1/2 times the diagonal times the diagonal. This diagonal is 10 plus 10, 20. This diagonal is 20, or 12 plus 12, 40. 1/2 times 20 times 40 gets us 400 centimeters squared. Number 11, I'm also going to break this one up 2 different ways. I got the big one in the middle plus the 4 on the outskirts. I think we've already seen this question actually. The biggest part of this is you got to figure out that the length of this piece of this rectangle in the middle is 2. 2 plus something is 6. And then here, this one is 3. 1 plus 1 plus 1 is 3. So 2 by 3 is 6 is where that comes from. If you do the one on the top and the big one on the top, make the one in the middle smaller. These 2 rectangles are very simple. 1 times 6. Here, I got to figure out 2 plus something plus 2 is 6. So that's where that 2 comes from. Either way, when you add up all those together, you get 14 units squared. Number 12, the lengths of the diagonals of rhombus are 8 and 6. That means finding the area is a piece of cake. 1/2 times 8 times 6 is 24 units squared. From unit 8, we do the perimeter part of this. If the lengths of the diagonals are 6 and 8, they get broken in half, 3 and 4. Here, and then each side of that rhombus will be the same. I will choose any of those right triangles. They're all congruent. 3 squared plus 4 squared is x squared. X is 5, so the perimeter is 20 units. All right, moving on. All right, Unit 8 review going on here. Number 13 is what type of a question? Do you see the big right triangle with the 2 smaller right triangles, that altitude coming out of there? This is a geometric mean question. So y, x, and z are geometric means between 2, 5, and the sum of that, 7. Y is a geometric mean between 2 and 7. It shares a triangle with 2 and 7. X shares triangles with 2 and 5. Z shares triangles with 5 and 7. Geometric means solve. Those are the answers. Number 14. How will we solve for x? I see that we're given 2 sides, and x is a third side. Given 2 sides, you need to solve for the third. That's the Pythagorean theorem. X is the hypotenuse here. 9 squared plus 12 squared equals x squared. Let's go solve that sucker. You'll get 15. Speaking of 15, number 15. The hypotenuse is 18. X and x there. Well, we got options because this is an isosceles triangle, which means this is a 45, 45, 90. Those angles are 45, 45, 90. Or we can use the Pythagorean theorem. So let's look at both ways. If the hypotenuse is 18, if 45, 45, 90, how do you go get that leg? Well, bigger to smaller, we divide by what number? Good, square root 2. We simplify 18 square root of 2 over 2. Simplify a little bit more. 9 square root of 2 is what x is equal to. Or we could have used the Pythagorean theorem. In this case, it's x squared plus x squared equals 18 squared. People like to make mistakes here. X squared plus x squared is how many x squares? It's 2x squareds. So 2x squared equals 324. Divide by 2. When you take the square root of 162, you will miraculously get 9 square root 2. That's 2 times 2 times 2 times 3 times 3 if you break down 162 all the way. All right, number 16. That 60 degrees should speak to you. This is a 30, 60, 90 triangle. Y is the hypotenuse, x is the short leg, 12 is the long leg. The long leg is given. We need to go from the long leg to the short leg. To do so, we will divide by the square root of 3, bigger to smaller, divide. The number is square root 3. Simplify, we get 4 square root 3. So the short leg is 4 square root 3. To go from the short leg of the hypotenuse, we will multiply. Multiply by what number? 2. So the answer is 8 square root 3. Number 17, we're given two sides, but our variable is an angle this time. When we're dealing with two sides and one angle, that's sine, cosine, tangent. So, ka, toa. So, 12 is the opposite, 16 is the hypotenuse. That's the sine ratio. The sine of x equals 12 over 16 is the equation you should write. When we're solving for the angle, this is where we use the arc sine of 12 over 16. Remember, this says the angle whose sine is 12 over 16, whose ratio of sine is 12 over 16 is what that means. Number 18, 28 is an angle, x and 32 are sides. Again, when you have two sides and an angle as your information, we will use sine, cosine, and tangent. X is opposite, 32 is adjacent, that's the tangent ratio. The tangent of the angle equals x over 32. Finish our proportion. In this case, we will cross multiply to get x times 1 instead of x over 1 doesn't help us here. So x equals 32 times the tangent over, tangent, let me try that again. X equals 32 times the tangent of 28. Type that in your calculator, you get 17.0. Let me know what questions you have. Bye-bye.